Vienna, Austria is a magical city. We discovered this for ourselves when my husband Jimmy and I got to go to Vienna and as part of a river cruise recently in the summer of 2024. And the cruise stopped for a day and a half, so including an overnight in Vienna. And we took great advantage of that and spent the night at a wonderful hotel, which I'll be telling you about in a little bit. But first, I want to turn the mic over to my husband, Jimmy McDonough, who is our food and travel, eco-friendly food and travel and adventure editor. And I am Courtney Drake McDonough. I'm the publisher and managing editor of RealFoodTraveler.com, a digital culinary travel magazine. And this is the Real Food Traveler podcast. So Jimmy, tell our listeners a little bit about our time in Vienna and why we came away feeling like it was something magical.
Yeah, sure. We have an article on RealFoodTraveler.com about our overnight stay and adventure in Vienna. That was, again, part of a river cruise on the Danube. And we found Vienna to be full of wonderful life, full of history, incredible architecture, terrific food, and friendly people, museums with just a treasure trove of history and artifacts, and it was such a terrific place. And even though we were only there, less than 2 full days, we saw so much and experienced so much. We both felt like, this is something we want to share with our Real Food Traveler readers and listeners. We'd absolutely encourage you to take a look at our articles from our visit to Vienna.
Tell everybody a little bit more about the way Vienna is laid out, because I found the Ringstrasse concept to be really interesting.
Yeah, so, modern Vienna is a huge city. I think it has 2 million people in the metropolitan area. So it is a very large, very modern city. However, in its core, the old town, it has buildings from the medieval era as well as every era in between. Certainly underneath it all, there are ruins from the Romans and who knows who else lying underneath the pavement. So as you mentioned, the Ringstrasse was at one time the walled perimeter of the inner city. Then the emperor, I believe Franz Joseph, he wanted to open up his city and get rid of those walls. So he had them removed, and in their place, a boulevard, a circular boulevard lined with beautiful apartment buildings and other structures were built in their place, as well as plenty of trees and greenery and parks. And really that legacy is what has made Vienna today the world's most livable city, according to various surveys. So that and the little tiny hunting lodge called Schönbrunn Palace, which is just on the outskirts, which is today thousands of acres of, actually I don't know how many thousands, but a very large park that the contemporary Viennese call their playground. And it's an incredible park. And so Vienna is full of these parks and parkways. The Ringstrasse is just part of it. And again, it just makes for a very walkable, fascinating place to be that feels comfortable. Even though it is a large city, it just felt very comfortable and walkable, right? Isn't that how you felt too?
Well, and I know this is going to sound kind of absurd and like I'm complaining about Europe, but we were on a Mediterranean cruise last year, and we went to a lot of wonderful stops and places that I'd always wanted to go. But to be honest, I got a little bit tired, I hate to say this, a little bit tired of these fortress cities that we were walking through, because the walls were so high. There wasn't a lot of greenery, except maybe some trees growing out of cracks here and there, but there were a lot of long streets and corridors where you couldn't see anything except the sky straight above. You didn't have views. And although that was fascinating and the history is incredible, what was so refreshing to me about Vienna is that it's wide open. Even though there are all these buildings there's so much open space, and you can see for a long way, and what you see are these incredible buildings with this amazing architecture that are in incredible shape. I was really surprised to what great shape everything was in. As far as the eye can see, it's one pretty thing after another, and lots of trees and lots of parks, and it felt very open, and like a great place to just sit. We a few times we sat in cafes and on the patios and just kind of looked around, and because it is rather open. So that was something that really struck me, and I think something that added to my impression that it was such a pretty city.
Yeah, and Vienna has a rich history, and it was the seat of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the royal Habsburg family for centuries ruled. So the core of the city, well, I suppose the true core is St. Stephen's, an enormous cathedral, Gothic cathedral, with a very decorative, elaborately decorative tiled roof. Quite stunning. But close by is the Hofburg Palace complex. And surrounding that are these parks, open spaces, and plazas, and statuary, and monuments. It's a very imperial city in that respect, right? I mean, when you're strolling through, you're somewhere really unique and with a special history, and it really sets it apart. I was impressed by the use of decorative elements in so many of the structures, not just in the palace grounds, but elsewhere too, and just the scale and grandiose nature of everything really took me back. I knew that that's how Vienna has been loved by so many people, but what also really struck me was just I guess you'd call it like a joy of life that I sensed there, that the people we encountered were just so friendly and helpful, and again, for a big city, that's not always the case, right? You sometimes get folks who, especially in a heavily touristed place like Vienna, they might be jaded or impatient, and I don't know, boy, I don't remember anyone like that. Do you? I think, maybe we were just lucky, but we just met wonderful people in the restaurants, servers, as well as other staff, really terrific people with a good energy about them and a welcoming attitude.
Earlier you talked about the varying architecture. There is all this beautiful old architectures we were talking about, but there's new buildings, and they go together really well. It isn't a weird clash. It's instead an interesting juxtaposition. And what was the name of the museum we went to on our last afternoon that was right next to a very, very old building, and then here's this new, very modern museum and a really modern sculpture in between them. And what was the name of that museum?
I think that one in particular it's known as the Wien Museum. So in German or in Austrian language, Vienna is Wien, and I think it was just called Wien Museum. So it was the Museum of Vienna and Vienna history, which, by the way, as I indicate in my article, I highly recommend that you start your trip to Vienna there. After having Café Viennese and a tort or some other wonderful pastry that are everywhere there, because it shows you the history of Vienna and helps you get a sense of the place. And it was a fantastic museum, and yes, it is a very modern structure. The other museum we went to, if you recall, was the Leopold Museum, and that's in the museum's quarter, and which is where the old imperial stables were located. Now that the royal family is no longer there, it's been converted into a cultural complex. So there's this series of older original buildings and then some modern museums that have been added and other structures. The Leopold Museum, as you recall, that was the one with a special exhibition on Viennese artists, and that was fascinating. And we talk a little bit about that in the article as well. So that's another highlight, I think, of our visit. And to your point, again, a very modern, contemporary type of structure, and mingled with this Baroque architecture from the Habsburg family era.
One of the things that made me even want to go to Vienna in the first place is that as a travel writer, it's common for representatives from various tourism areas to come to different cities and visit with groups of travel writers to basically give them a brief introduction to that destination. And so I was fortunate enough to have a meeting with someone from Austria Tourism who had told us many interesting things, but two that really stuck out were that there was so much green area, that their parks were so plentiful, and that people really did utilize them. And we definitely saw that. I couldn't believe how many people were just enjoying the park on a weekday, having picnics and strolling around. And they're lovely, and they're very good about putting up a lot of statues, usually about people from classical music times, which we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other thing was about the presence of music and the love of waltzing, that she said that children grow up learning to waltz, and basically any Viennese person knows how to waltz. It's just it's just common knowledge. It's just what's done. And so for them and for visitors, apparently, and this is one of the reasons I wish we had more time and why we need to return, you can attend a concert and attend a Viennese ball all the time. They just happen all the time. They're not just a once-a-year special thing or a big fundraiser or anything like that. They're just a gathering that people have. And a lot of Viennese have the gowns and the outfits. But if you're a visitor, apparently you can rent the clothing if you want to, dress authentically and attend a ball. And if you don't know how to waltz, you can rent a partner who will be your partner for the evening and teach you how to waltz. And so there's really no excuse for not partaking of that opportunity, except in our case, we weren't there long enough to be able to do that, but that would have been wonderful. Yeah. But Vienna does have an incredible musical history. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was, performed for the Empress when he was 6 years old and climbed up in her lap afterwards and gave her a hug. We learned that at Schönbrunn. Franz Liszt is from there. Strauss, of course. A simple stroll through with some of the parks will illuminate you as to all the different composers who were from there. And so it's a city rich in musical history. So if you love classical music, you must go. And so just like there are a lot of opportunities for attending waltzes, there are opportunities to attend concerts all the time. And we got to do that, thanks to you surprising me with a lovely evening for our anniversary. So I'll let you tell everyone about kind of opportunity, because anybody can do that.
Sure, yeah. So one of my personal dreams has been to attend a royal, well, not a royal, but attend a concert in Vienna in a beautiful setting, and preferably with Viennese music, as you mentioned, Courtney, Strauss, Mozart, Liszt, and others. And so luckily I came across such an opportunity on TripAdvisor, actually, and booked it. And so the first night we were there, well, the only night we were there, we were able to go to the Schönbrunn Palace, which was the summer palace for the Habsburg family, to escape the stinky central city. As we learned, Vienna was a very stinky place in the summer because the sewage system was not very good way back when. Anyway, we went to Schönbrunn, and we were able to go on a self-guided tour of some of the palace. It might have even been the most interesting because it was sort of the personal quarters of the emperor and the family. Got to learn about their soap opera type life. And after that, we went and had dinner at a restaurant that was on site there. And after that, we had a quick mini tour of the gardens, the incredible gardens. I wouldn't even call it really a tour. We just got a glimpse, right? So we were able to take a look at a tiny portion of the gardens and walked down to the orangery wing of the palace where the concert was held. And yes, it was a small local Viennese orchestra with a wonderful maestro, and they put on a terrific show playing a variety of local musicians. including Strauss. And they had some opera excerpts, performances, which were wonderful, and a little bit of acting, which was charming. No Oscar-winning performances, but it was charming. At the very end, they got us really got the crowd involved with some clapping and participation with a Strauss tune. So, yeah, music is a big thing in Vienna. So absolutely, you got to do it when you're there. And I would encourage you to go. There are other theaters around the city that are also beautiful. It's not just at Schönbrunn. I found that to be really special, just with the whole mystique of a royal palace and whatnot. But certainly there are other venues. I'd highly recommend that.
And lest you think, and I'm using lest purposely, lest you think it was stuffy, the concert, it was not. It was
It
a
wasn't.
lot of humor, very lively, very energetic. It was a lot of fun. And
you didn't have to get all dressed up.
No.
You could, but you didn't have to.
No, and it was a surprisingly light and joyful evening. We heard from some other fellow cruisers on our river cruise with Viking who'd gone to other concerts there, that it was the same kind of thing, that it was very lively and fun and nothing, where you find yourself nodding off, no matter how much you love classical music, as we do. So it's probably safe to say that that's the general tone there if you go to a concert, that it is enjoyable and joyful and made to be fun and not a dry, stuffy thing. Speaking of dinner, let's talk about the food in Vienna, because although we weren't there that long, we stuffed quite a bit of eating in, literally and figuratively.
Sure. Yeah. Well, for me, two standouts are the cafe that it was in Newer Market. It's a plaza or Platz called Newer Market, not far from St. Stephen's Platz, which St. Stephen's Platz is a pedestrian walkway or thoroughfare, and it's mobbed with tourists, very, very busy. And there's plenty to see and plenty of choices there along the Stephen's Platz. But we really wanted to kind of venture out and go to a bit of a quieter place. When we didn't want a walk-up eatery, we wanted to sit down and enjoy and relax a bit. And we came upon this Platz called Newer Market, and there was this wonderful cafe there. And I don't even know if I can pronounce the name, but it's in the article. So look at the article, because we really lucked out, because it was totally by happenstance that we came upon it. We hadn't done any advanced research or anything. And it turns out it was a terrific cafe. We sat outside and watched locals and tourists alike go by, some horse carriages. But the food was terrific. And it turns out this particular place, they're known as Vienna's first and only, I think, at least that's what they claim, Austrian-style tapas. So you can get smaller bites of a variety of traditional Austrian foods, as well as some perhaps fusion of Austrian and other influences. And so it was nice because we did order a few different dishes, and everything was delicious. It just was a wonderful experience. The other experience that stands out to me is the Cafe Spurl, which is very short walk from the museum's quarter. And Cafe Spurl has been around for well over 100 years. And it's the type of traditional Vienna coffee house that I had hoped we would be able to find. And it wasn't super busy with tourists. It was a nice blend of visitors as well as locals. And it just had a fantastic old world atmosphere. And again, we sat and lingered and had some traditional fare, Viennese fare, including Apfelstrudel for dessert. And it was for me, it was a super terrific experience just to kind of linger and soak in the history and the atmosphere. And I really let my imagination go wild. And I don't know if you felt the same way, about either one of these. So those are two that really stood out to me. How about you?
Well, the thing that I was really looking forward to at Cafe Sperl was experiencing the quote-unquote coffee culture of Vienna. And it is such a thing that before we got to Vienna, one of the little talks that they gave on the cruise was to teach us about the Viennese coffee culture, because it is, obviously we're in America, if you can't tell by our accents, but ordering coffee there is not the same as ordering coffee here. And if you go to order coffee the way you would here, you're going to get something very, very different than what you're expecting. And so a program director on the cruise had given us sort of a guide as to what to order. So that was helpful going in, because there are a lot of options there, and I felt kind of well versed in being able to order exactly what I wanted, which now I can't even remember what I ordered, but it's in the article. But yeah, it reminded me, and I think this is what you're alluding to, kind of the salons of Paris, where all the intellectuals and the artists would gather and just spend hours talking all their deep thoughts,
right? Yeah.
Deep artistic thoughts,
the meaning of life,
over a bite of apple strudel. And so, yeah, it definitely had that air about it, for sure. And it was quite a varied clientele there, and we were lucky we got a seat, because it was pretty busy. So normally I go by the belief that I've heard from other very, very well-traveled travel writers, that when you're going to go find a place to eat, you should go off the beaten path, go a few blocks away from the city center, to the places that don't look all glitzy. She calls them brass and glass, one of the writers that I've listened to. Avoid the brass and glass, meaning that they're super shiny, they've got huge windows, there's usually somebody outside trying to lure you in, and instead find the places that are a little bit more unobtrusive and just look like they're the neighborhood restaurant, not a tourist place. And that first restaurant you talked about was off the beaten path, and definitely seemed to be, just judging by the people around us, definitely seemed to be a place frequented by the locals. Cafe Sperl is definitely more of a tourist destination because it is so famous, but it didn't have that lure you in kind of feeling at all. I
didn't see that at all. I didn't think of it as touristy at all. It felt very, very non-touristy, but there you go.
Yeah. I mean, people were definitely there because they'd heard about it, but it didn't have that kind of icky feeling at all. It was very nice.
Yeah, that's true. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because we were looking at the other couples, and there was a diverse array of couples that you could tell were, like us, they were visitors, but then they're, with the locals. Yeah.
And I do want to talk about the food at the hotel where we stayed. Before we get into our lovely overnight, is there anything else you want to talk about Vienna overall?
I don't think so. I could go on for hours, so we don't want that.
No, we
don't want our listeners to get bored.
We don't. And we have two great articles on the site that help fill in some of this, and have great pictures too that we took that kind of will help you picture what we're describing. So yes, we were fortunate enough to be able to stay at a place called the Hotel Altstadt Vienna, which is in Spittelberg, which is this Vienna's 7th district. And I'll take a moment to say Vienna is full of distinct little neighborhoods that each have their own completely different personality, and that's something that Vienna loves about itself, and they really celebrate that there is a different character to all these different neighborhoods, but yet they're all part of this wonderful cohesive city. The buildings were gorgeous, the architecture, and as you mentioned, this hotel was near the museum district and a very short Uber ride to Schönbrunn, so it was a really great location close to parks and whatnot. In the article, I give a brief history of building, which was, I won't go into everything now, but it was built in 1902. In the 19th century, the area around this was very poverty-stricken, and it became known as a red light district, frequented by military people and workers, and it wasn't the greatest neighborhood, but the building was built in 1902, and in the 1950s it was a pension, And before it was purchased in the early 90s, it had been inhabited by immigrants from Russia who were in Vienna to obtain their exit papers to travel to the US or Canada or Israel. In the latter half of the 20th century, there was a huge urban renewal in that area, and it really transformed that neighborhood into something wonderful and desirable that lured a lot of cafes and small business owners there. There's a famous Christmas market that goes on there every year that I would love to return to. So it's and they're known for their very collection of very well preserved Biedermeier architecture. And I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. Need to look that up. And I'm sure we saw many prime examples of it, but if you're an architecture fan, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and it would make you want to go more. So in 1991, the current owner, Otto Wiesenthal, he was a businessman, and he traveled all the time all over Europe, and he got tired of kind of these anonymous, heartless places that one often stays in when they travel a lot. And it was always his dream, despite being in all these other industries and doing well at them, he always wanted to open a hotel. And I love stories like that, when somebody has a dream of doing something completely different than what they've been doing. So he opened this hotel, and initially it started out with, I think, just 24 rooms. But as more spaces became available in this building, in this kind of meandering apartment building, they obtained more and more, and now there are 62 buildings or rooms and suites. The thing that makes the Altstadt Vienna Hotel stand out is the art collection. That was the other reason why Otto wanted to open this, is because he had an incredible art collection, paintings primarily, and wanted a place to be able to display them. And so here was this hotel with all of these rooms. And so not only is his art all over the place, but the really amazing thing about this place is that every room is decorated by somebody else. He invited friends who were artists and designers and architects to come in, musicians, and said, what do you envision in here? I'm giving you free rein to design this room the way you like. And so every single room is completely different and very creative, and some are a little bit more subtle, and some are just outlandish, and the colors vary tremendously, the styles of the architecture vary tremendously. They all have their own personality, and although they are in a way their own art installation, they're hotel rooms, and they're very comfortable, literally comfortable. I mean, you feel happy to be there. The beds are incredibly comfortable. The furniture's comfortable. They have great amenities. So it is a place to call your home away from home when you're in Vienna, but so much different than a corporate hotel chain kind of thing. We all know what those are like, and they have their place, and we've been grateful to stay in them sometimes, but oh my gosh, this was just such an amazing opportunity to be able to experience a place like this. So you can be guaranteed that whatever room you're going to stay in is going to be something unique, but you get to, as a guest, you get to go around either with being guided by somebody on the staff, or you can go on they call it an unguided tour, and you can go around, and there are QR codes outside of several of the rooms, and so you can look at that, and it will tell you what art pieces are inside, give you a glimpse of what it's like inside, tell you a little bit more about the person who designed it. So you get a chance to kind of experience it all. The other really fabulous part about staying at the Altstadt is the food. The breakfast that's included is amazing. They partner with a lot of local vendors for everything from their bread to the coffee, the tea, and a whole variety of the produce, a whole variety of other things. And so the breakfast is so plentiful. You went nuts over the bread, so I'm going to let you talk about the breads, but there were also different salads, different kinds of porridge and various cereals, cheese, meats, abundance of fruit. So you can go around to the buffet and take all these things that you want, or every day there's a small selection of hot dishes that you can order, and they'll bring to you fresh juices, delicious coffee, and there's a series of 3 different dining rooms that all have a different personality where you can eat. And the nice thing is that breakfast is served until 11 a.m. on the weekdays and 11:30 on the weekends. So no rushing to think, I got to get there before the buffet closes. So, but to finish up talking about the Altstadt, I'll let you talk about the bread because that just blew you away. And you love bread so much.
Yeah, I'm a bread lover. I'm a pastry lover and I'm a bread lover. And so they had this display of these beautiful loaves of bread that were just like works of art, the way they had them positioned on their pedestals. And then they had a little sign next to each one, and each one had a name. And I wish I could remember the names, but each loaf had a name. And the name is based upon the preparation method, the ingredients, etc. And of course, these were beautifully crafted artisanal breads using a yeast that goes back who knows how far. It hurt a little bit to cut into that first loaf. Hurt in the sense of it was so beautiful. I felt like I was, defacing a work of art, but that's what it was there for. So I certainly had a couple of slices of 2 of the loaves, and then with the wonderful fresh butter, it was just, I could have been done right there. Just that perfect blend of a crispy crust, a nice center, but it wasn't too light. These are multi-grain breads, so they are hearty, but it still had a lovely, delicate interior, even though it was multi-grain. So, gosh, that was definitely a highlight for me of what they had to offer, in addition to the croissant and the yummy pastries and baked goods that they had. And, one thing I just wanted to add about the decor of the different rooms, it's all beautifully and elegantly executed. So it's not like a fun house, I can imagine some people might think, oh, that sounds weird. Like that sounds like a bunch of hippies, like it's a commune. It's not at all. It was so beautifully executed. Every part of the Altstadt is just beautifully executed from top to bottom. So it's a wonderful place, definitely. That was memorable.
Jimmy wrote an article about Vienna as a whole, and I wrote about our night at the Hotel Altstadt Vienna. Their website, which we link to, is one of the best websites I've ever seen in terms of really introducing people to what the whole thing is all about, and letting you get a glimpse into some of the rooms and meet who the designers are behind the different rooms. So you'll see what Jimmy means. They're just beautiful, and it just makes you want to come back and stay in certain rooms. And of course, I'm sure if you're traveling and you've got enough notice, you probably could request a specific room if it's available when you want it. With all of our podcasts for Real Food Traveler, we always have an article, an anchor article I call it, on our site that has the little player so you can listen to our podcast while looking at the article. But in that article, we will have the links to both of our articles and some other information and a few photos just to tease a little bit. Jimmy, thank you for joining me again for another one of our Real Food Traveler podcasts, which are available on iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, and Amazon. Pretty much anywhere that you like to listen to your podcasts, we are probably there. So just look for the Real Food Traveler podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.